Great. Okay, we are recording. The reason I asked your permission to start a little bit early is because we are in the middle of what's called Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles. So a tent in Hebrew, a tent, a booth, a hut, a tabernacle is the word sukkah. Sukkah in the singular, Sukkot in the plural. So the Feast of Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles. And the reason I wanted to start early is because there is a special thing that we do with what is called the Arba Minim, the 4 species for the Feast of Tabernacles. And there is a wave offering that you do with what's called the lulav, the palm branch. And the palm branch is gathered together with the myrtle branch and the willow branch, the myrtle on the right and the willow on the left, and the myrtle, as you can see, is a little higher than that one. And then this very interesting, bumpy little citron fruit called an etrog. And you gather these 4 species together and do a wave offering before the Lord. And the reason that I wanted to start early is sundown is 7:01. And we've got to do this before sundown. So typically you do this in the morning after morning prayers, but I wanted to save it to be able to do it with you. Okay? So the Bible says that the Jewish people are to gather these 4 species and gather them together. And I'll give you various teachings about the 4 species tonight. But the palm branch, the date palm, this is a symbol of the spine. The myrtle is a symbol of the eye. The willow is a symbol of the lips. And the etrog is a symbol of the heart. Okay? So what we want to do is to make sure that all of our being is honoring the Lord. And so what we do is we say the most repeated worship phrase in the Bible, Hodu Ladonai Ki Tov, Ki Leolam Chazdo. Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His mercy endures forever. Okay? So what we do is we do this in all 6 directions. North, south, east, west, and up and down, to the heavens and to the earth. So let's all say this together as we do this exercise, as we wave the lulav and etrog. So here we go. Hodu ladonai ki tov, ki leolam chazdo. 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 There we go. So that is how we do this specific thing. And it's a very interesting practice that Jewish people still do today. What is interesting is in the book of Revelation, it says, I think it's Revelation 7, somebody can look it up and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Revelation 7. It says that a number from all nations that no one could number, a group of people gathering from all nations that no one could number was there. It was so many people you couldn't even count them, and they were all waving their palm branches. So we believe this is the only biblical holiday, the only Jewish festival that is evangelistic. You're supposed to invite people in to your tabernacle or booth. You build a temporary dwelling in your yard, and you at least try to eat a meal out there or have your coffee out there. The really religious, the really pious camp out there. They live there for a week. And you invite people in. And the people that you invite in are called the Ushpizin, the holy guests. And every night, every day of Sukkot has a different guest associated with it. So the first day is Abraham. The second day is Isaac. So as the sun goes down tonight and we enter into the third day, it will be Jacob. And it's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, I think Joseph, King David, maybe Solomon. I can't remember the last one. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, these gathering together of this lulav and etrog, we are doing this in the book of Revelation after the second coming. So I happen to think, remember, our sins are already atoned for in the looking forward, okay? We still have to stand before the judge. Everyone has to stand before the great white throne. It's just that we know what our verdict is already if we have a right relationship with God, right? We still have to stand before the judge. So there's the Feast of Trumpets, which is known as Rosh Hashanah or Yom Teruah, the day of the trumpet blast. Then you have Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Then you have Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, which is the Ingathering. And that prophetically is exactly what happens in that order in the last days. We have the great trumpet, Messiah returns. We stand before the throne, we are judged. We celebrate at a great banquet of the Lamb, that is the ingathering of the people from the four corners. That is the Feast of Tabernacles. And it says in the prophets that during that 1,000-year reign, that people will call the millennial reign of Christ or the Messianic age, during that 1,000 years, the Bible's very explicit on this in the prophets, that if you do not come up and celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem, your land will get no rain. So this is a thing that happens forever. So the reason I want to educate you about it is because we'll all be doing this at the second coming. So now you know how to properly do it. Now you can tell your neighbor who doesn't know any Jewish stuff, you can educate them. Oh, I saw my pastor do this. You shake it. Now some people, so we did it very gently. The people that are really into it are like, Hodu le'Adonai kitov. But that's why I don't do it. But, there you go. Now there's a tradition that at the end of the holiday that you actually cut this thing open and make like a jelly with it or a jam. Some people, plant the seeds. It's very interesting, this particular fruit. And this came from Israel. So anyway, let's talk about the Feast of Tabernacles tonight, Sukkot. Let's also, Linda very graciously got us these wonderful charts of Torah portions. Let me just show you how to do this. So every synagogue in the world reads the same passage of Scripture every Saturday, every Shabbat. So starting this next week, not this coming Saturday, but the week after, we start all the way back at the beginning of Genesis, where it says Genesis or Bereshit. The word in Hebrew for beginning is Reshit, and the B means in. So in the beginning, Genesis. You see the number, Torah portion number 1 is called Bereshit, and the reading date for that is the week where the Shabbat lands on October 18th. So all during that week leading up to the 18th, we're studying that Torah portion. So next Wednesday, we're going to start reading and studying this passage. So you can see it's Genesis 1:1 through 6:8. So if you want to read and prepare for what we're going to talk about that week, you can read ahead. You'll see another thing that's called the Haftarah. Haftarah comes from a word that means the conclusion. At the conclusion of the Torah reading, there's a reading from the prophets. That's called the Haftarah. And so for that, it's Isaiah 42:5 through 43:10. And then, because we're believers, we have a gospel reading of John 1:1 through 17. So this is for all of 2025 and 26, because the Jewish calendar year, as far as the reckoning of years, begins September, October, in our civil calendar, the Gregorian calendar. So anyway, that's a wonderful resource for you. It's great. It's small. It folds up. You can put it in your Bible. It's great. Yeah, thank you, Linda, for that. And then, can I have a volunteer just to shut the door just for our beautiful teenagers and their lovely noises? Thank you, sir. All right, let us dive right in. I am so excited. So, as an introduction, this is the joyful feast of God's presence. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, the meaning of the word Sukkot is booths or tabernacles. It always follows Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and it moves us from repenting to rejoicing. So there is a season on the Jewish calendar that we call the High Holy Days. The High Holy Days begin with Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets. In fact, let's just make a note of this. Let's just look at how the biblical calendar is also the prophetic calendar of the last days. Okay? So we have Rosh Hashanah, which is trumpets. We don't know the day or the hour, but I think it's around this time that Jesus is going to return. Why? Because it talks about the great trumpet blast. So there is a certain trumpet call, a shofar, a ram's horn trumpet call, called a tekiah. Tekiah. There are 4 trumpet blasts that you blow on the high holy days from Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur and then into Sukkot. The 4 trumpet blasts are called tekiah, shevarim, teruah, and tekiah gedolah, or the great tekiah. The word tekiah in English is translated as shout. So when it says with the trumpet blast and the shout of the archangel, when it talks about the second coming, that's what it says. That's the language in the English Bible, is the shout of the archangel. It doesn't mean a shout with the voice. It's the tekiah. It's a shofar blast. It's a trumpet blast. According to Jewish tradition, it's a specific trumpet. It's a specific ram's horn. It is the ram's horn from the ram that Abraham sacrificed in place of his son Isaac. It's very specific. One of those horns God reserved for the archangel to blow at the second coming, at the return of the Lord. So we have Rosh Hashanah, or the Feast of Trumpets. So that, I believe, it'll be around that time that we see the second coming. Then we have Yom Kippur. This is atonement. Now, remember, we know what the verdict is going to be, right? But the judgment hasn't happened yet. We all still have to stand before the Lord in judgment. It's just that we know our verdict is not guilty based on what Jesus has done and by our acceptance of it. So you have to think of it in terms of outside of time and space. We have the great trumpet blast, he returns. Then we have the great, what the Bible calls the great white throne judgment, and that's when officially our sins are atoned for. That's when we are given the verdict of not guilty. So then we have atonement. Then we have Sukkot. Sukkot is Tabernacles. And this is the banquet. Now, according to Jewish tradition, there is a great banquet. Jesus talks about it, where he says, many of the Gentiles from all nations will sit down at a great feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's a quote that's used in The Chosen that creates some problems with the religious leaders, as it did in Jesus' day. But this banquet is at the Feast of Tabernacles, and according to Jewish tradition, it is under a sukkah, or a tent, made from the skin of Leviathan, the great sea creature that God will slay. So, according to Jewish tradition, there were 2 Leviathans created, a male and a female. But God said, if we allow both of these to exist and they mate, they will take over the whole sea. They'll kill everything. So God created 2, killed one, and preserved it in salt for this great banquet. And the other one, at the end of time, God will kill, use its giant skin as a giant tent that we will be under, and he will prepare the meat of that as well. And so all of everyone at that banquet, millions and billions of people at that banquet, will eat from 2 fish. This is a very important tradition. And this is probably those that really knew Jewish tradition at the feeding of the 5,000, where everyone ate from 2 fish and 5 loaves. This is very symbolic. It's very symbolic. To a Jew at that time, 5 loaves of bread, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So loaves of bread, 5 is a symbol of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. So 5 books of Moses, 5 loaves, 2 fish, the Leviathans that are slain at the end of time. It is really very prophetic, where Jesus not only fulfills prophecy, he fulfills theories that were in the Jewish tradition at that time. It is said at that great banquet that there will be an unlimited, miraculous supply of new wine. So it is important when Mary, the mother of Jesus, says they've run out of wine, Jesus doesn't say, I'm not going to do it. What does he say? It's not time yet. It's not time for the unlimited supply of wine. We're not at the end yet. I still have to die. I still have to do these things. So when Jesus miraculously makes a supply of wine, it plays into even the tradition that when Messiah comes, it's unlimited. It is said, there's an old Jewish tradition that one grape in the kingdom will give 10,000 gallons of new wine. One grape. So it's crazy, some of these wonderful traditions. Yes, sir?
I was just going to ask you about the Leviathan thing. Because
yes.
I randomly watched a video about that, probably either last night or the night before last, and it said exactly what you said, and I'm like, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
And my question is, where does that come from? Like, it has to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah. So nothing in the Jewish tradition is just pulled out of thin air.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes from books that are Jewish books that aren't in the canon of the Bible. Okay. Books like Enoch, books like that are in the Catholic Bible, books of the Apocrypha. Which, by the way, in the original 1611 printing of the King James Bible, the Apocrypha was intact. We had all those books of the Apocrypha in the King James Bible, but they were later removed in later printings. But a lot of these books, they're historical, and they tell us a lot of good information. But because when it was decided by the powers that be, the books that quote-unquote make it into the Bible, we had a litmus test of like how many direct quotations from the Old Testament that you had in order for it to be corroborative. So some of these didn't make it into the Protestant Bible, but they're in the Catholic Bible and they're in the Jewish tradition. Maccabees, Esdras, Bel and the Dragon, these types of things.
It's in the book of Job, Leviathan.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Only place I remember.
Yeah, can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? It talks about, him having scales like armor. It also talks about him breathing fire and making the sea bubble and boil. Some pretty amazing things. There are people that will say that Leviathan is a crocodile. Listen, we've had the crocodile hunter. People have wrestled crocodiles for eternity. We're talking about something that is truly scary. Yeah, like God is making a point here, so we know it's something truly amazing. So anyway, all this is a prophetic timeline. The feasts that are mentioned in the Bible, and even the fasts, are a prophetic timeline of what's to come. It's really very interesting. So it is also one of what's called the Shalosh Regalim. Shalosh is a word that means three, and a regel is your foot. So Regalim means feet, the 3 feet. Do you have 3 feet? No. It's the 3 foot festivals, the 3 pilgrimage festivals, the 3 feasts that you have to travel to Jerusalem if you're a head of household to do. Those Shalosh Regalim, or those pilgrimage festivals, are Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. So a key quote for us here, well, the theme, joy, provision, presence, and dwelling with God. It is known as Zman Simchatenu, the time or the season of our joy. It is nothing but joy. And it's amazing that the high holy days start with Rosh Hashanah, go through a fast day of Yom Kippur, of atonement, but then end up with the biggest joy. And it's something that it really corresponds to the Jewish reckoning of the day. The day starts at sundown. So the day as it goes along gets darker. Then it gets really dark, and it ends with getting brighter and brighter. The beginning of the month, according to the Jewish calendar, the first of every month is a new moon. That's when the moon is totally dark. Then little by little, sliver by sliver, it gets bigger and bigger to the 15th of the month, and it's a full moon. And so you'll see that a lot of Jewish holidays, whether it's Passover, Feast of Tabernacles, all begin on the 15th of the month when the moon is brightest, so that people can travel by the light of the moon. It's also a symbol of God's glory. An interesting thing that I heard from a rabbi this week that I'd never thought about it this way before. In the Gospel of Matthew, when we have those generations, that it says 14 generations from Adam to Abraham, and 14 from Abraham to David, and 14 from David to Messiah. As I've told you before, if you go back and look at the Old Testament, you're like, Pastor Matt, it's not 14. It's actually many more than that. They've skipped some. Well, that's on purpose. Matthew's doing this for number one, to make sure that he has 14 generations, because remember 14 is the number of David, and he's trying to say that Jesus is the son of David. He's like King David. So 14, 14, 14, David, David, David. But also another thing to think about is the 14th of the month is when you roll over into the 15th, you have the brightest. So if you start with Adam, the light of God gets brighter and brighter until we focus, after that 14th generation, you have Abraham, where we have a brightness of God's glory, him revealing himself to Abraham. Then we go from Abraham, you start over, and the light goes dimmer like the moon. Then you start and you go up another 14, and you have King David. It's the brightness, God's glory. And then we wane a bit. Then we have another 14, and then after 14 is Jesus. We have the bright light again. It's really an interesting way to look at that. Moving on, and please stop me with any questions. Feel free to interrupt. It is not a problem at all. The biblical command and historical roots. Who wants to look at Leviticus 23, verses 39 through 43? And then someone else, let's look at Nehemiah 8, 14 through 17. Who's got the first one?
I did.
Okay, let's go there.
So, beginning with the 15th day of the 7th month, after you have gathered the crops of the land, celebrate the festival to the Lord for 7 days. The first day is a day of Sabbath rest, and the 8th day also is a day of Sabbath rest. On the first day, you're to take branches from luxuriant trees, from palms, willows, and other leafy trees, and rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. Celebrate this as a festival to the Lord for 7 days each year. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. Celebrate it in the 7th month. Live in temporary shelters for 7 days. All native-born Israelites are to live in such shelters, so your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God.
Nice. So just something that some people pick up on and they get confused about. So on the 15th day of the 7th month, but we just had Rosh Hashanah, which means the head of the year. So we're in the first month. We're in the first month in the way of counting as we count years. We roll over into 5786 this past week. It is the 7th month if you start counting from the first month as far as spiritual things go, the month of Aviv or the month of Nisan when Passover happens. So we're 7 months from that. So if you count 7, then we're there. Nehemiah 8. Who's got that? Yes, ma'am.
They found written in the law, which the Lord had commanded through Moses, that the Israelites were to live in temporary shelters during the festival of the 7th month, and that they should proclaim this word and spread it throughout their towns and in Jerusalem. Go out into the hill country and bring back branches of olive and wild olive trees, and from myrtles, palms, and shade trees to make temporary shelters, as it is written. So people went out and brought back branches and built themselves temporary shelters on their own roofs, in their courtyards, in the courtyards of the house of God, and in the square by the water gate, and the one by the gate of Ephraim. The whole company that had returned from exile built temporary shelters and lived in them. From the days of Joshua, son of Nun, until that day, the Israelites had not celebrated it like this, and their joy was very great.
Awesome. It's pretty cool. God commands his people to have a party and to do it for 7 days. And then the 8th day is another celebration. So the Israelites are commanded to dwell in booths for 7 days. It's a reminder of the wilderness journey. That's why there are certain laws. It cannot be a permanent structure. At least the walls have to be completely temporary. It can't be something that you just build and you never... In fact, there are even rules. There are allowances, like let's say you have a permanent structure. Like I was at one in oh goodness, what country was that? Belgium. I was at a synagogue in Belgium, and they have a sukkah, a temporary booth that they do for Feast of Tabernacles. But the frame of it, the main thing of the building, is up all year. And I said, well, so what's the Jewish law? How can this be up all year? And they say because of a grace in the laws, technically the roof has to be made of like natural material like sticks. It's very common for it to be bamboo or like palm fronds and stuff like that. So what the law is if you, because you have to, if you've left it up all year, as long as you gather it up and then drop it back down, it counts. That it's temporary. That it's not permanently nailed down. And so it's very interesting. Like there are these loopholes for people with extenuating circumstances. But the whole point is, it's not the type of place that you'd like to live in. It's a temporary dwelling. That's why it's called a tent or a booth. And normally the sides will be made of some sort of material that will flap in the wind. Although it can be like, luan or balsa wood. It can be some kind of wood, but it just cannot be permanent. It's got to be a temporary thing. And the roof has to be such that you can see the stars through it. It has to be such that if it should rain, you would get wet. Now you're not required to be there in the rain. If it starts raining, you can go in your house if you like. But it has to be where you can see the stars and you would get wet if it rained. Yes?
So, one at the corner of Nova and Wilmette has one of them.
There you go. Yeah.
Small one.
Yep. You'll see them around.
Real small little frame. And
Yeah. They even make them, again, for people in extenuating circumstances, like you have an apartment with a balcony that's this big. They make what they call a pop-up sukkah. It's one of those things like a tent for kids, whatever, that it rolls up into a circle and you just kind of throw it and it goes boing and it pops up. And there's a little bamboo mat that you put on the top and that counts. It's kosher. And you go in there and just and sit. They make all manner of them. That's my goal next year. I want to buy a pop-up sukkah. I think it's fun. And the agricultural tie, it's the Feast of Ingathering. It's the end of the harvest season. It's also that Hoshana Rabbah, the last great day of the feast in John chapter 7. That's known as the Hoshana Rabbah, or the Great Hosanna. They wave the palm branches, and thousands of people would do it. You'd start waving them, and you get very vigorous with the waving so that it sounds like wind coming through the trees, like a storm is coming, like rain is coming, and you pray for rain. If you read the Bible, especially in an archaic translation like the King James, you'll hear about the early rains and the latter rains. It's because there's a rainy season in the spring that stops. There is no rain all throughout until we get to Feast of Tabernacles. And you just have to have the faith that the rain is going to come back. And so when it rains, it's a big celebration because the Lord is faithful. He brought the rain back. And so it's a very exuberant time. As far as Jewish insights, a rabbi who is nicknamed the Or HaChaim, or the Light of Life, he says the sukkah unites Israel under the same fragile covering, a symbol of equality before God. The rich and the poor all dwell under a temporary dwelling. There's no mansion. It's all, everybody's kind of doing the same thing. We're all camping out with God. And the rabbinic tradition is guests, or ushpizin, represent the patriarchs and righteous figures invited to the sukkah. If you don't mind subtitles, there's a very cool movie that I think is still on YouTube. I bought it on the Apple Store on iTunes, so I know you can buy it, but I think you can also watch it on YouTube. There's a movie called Ushpizid. It's an Aramaic word that means guests. Ushpizin. And if you want to, you can look it up. It's all in Hebrew because it takes place in Israel. And the rabbi, the Orthodox rabbi that is the main character, is a real rabbi in real life. And the lady who plays his wife is his real wife. And it's a really cool movie about this rabbi in his, let's say, former life was a criminal, someone who was in and out of jail. But he gave his life to God and became a rabbi. And what do you do if you're supposed to invite people into your sukkah, into your booth, into your tabernacle? What are you supposed to do if, let's say, some old friends from your old life show up at your door that are still a part of that bad life? Do you invite them in? And how do you treat them? What do you do? If you live a new life, but you have an opportunity to show a kindness to people who are in need of a place to stay, but they're of your old crowd, Do you trust yourself to be strong and let them in, and you influence them, not them influence you, or what do you do? And that's what this movie Ushpizin is all about. It's really very interesting. But like I said, just you got to be ready and willing to read a lot. But my favorite scene of someone praying with a fervent urgency is in that movie. And he starts out, and he's a particular branch of Judaism called Breslov. They follow a man named Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, or Bratislav, we would say. And they believe that not only does the spiritual world animate the physical world, but the physical world animates the spiritual world. So they believe in moving air when you pray, especially clapping. They believe that if you clap fervently and with excitement when you pray, that it moves the atmosphere and has an effect on the spiritual world, on the angels and on the demons. It's very interesting. It's an interesting way of looking at that. So of moving air when you pray. And so this prayer, he goes to a park and he's sitting on a park bench and he starts off his prayer like, Lord, sometimes I feel like you're a bit too hard on me. It's just very honest. And he was like, why do you have to be so hard on me? And if not for me, what about my wife? What's she ever done? Answer my prayer in her merit, not mine. What do I have to offer? But she's a righteous woman. Answer my prayer on her account. And he gets to the point where he's praying and praying and praying, and then finally he starts clapping and clapping, and then he just lets out a war cry. And they believe in that too. The Breslovers, they believe you just shout. You just, ah! And that has a spiritual power behind it. It's really quite interesting. So if you are looking for something to watch this season,
Buy or rent on
you can buy or rent on YouTube. There you go. Ushpizin, worth your time. Worth your time. Okay.
Down a little farther and it was free.
Yeah, there may be some that have done an upload. Who knows?
Like this one's got 18 videos, full movie, so there's a segment.
Oh, that's in segments. There you go.
Oh,
Let's look at our page 2. If you turn the second page there, the sukkah, a picture of faith and fragility. Fragile. Built with 3 walls and a leafy roof. The leafy roof is called skach. And in order for it to be kosher, it's got to be like palm branches or branches from trees, or like I said, bamboo is very easy because it's very straight. Bamboo is very straight. So a lot of times companies will make a bamboo mat that has little spaces in between so you can see the stars, and you just simply roll it out on top of I had one for years. My sukkah kind of fell apart about 2 years ago after using it for about 10 years. And I had a kit, like a sukkah kit. You can buy it. And it all folds up like one of those canopies that you unfurl at the tailgate party. Must allow the stars to be seen. We talked about that. That shows dependence on God. And the sukkah reminds us that everything we have is temporary, but God's faithfulness is permanent. It really can remind us, as we see in our messianic connection there, 2 Corinthians 5:1, if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God. So even our bodies are a temporary dwelling. Our bodies are going to be remade. Our bodies are going to be made new. And in John 1:14, the Word became flesh, and in the Greek, the word that is used is the same word that corresponds in the Hebrew to the word sukkah. The Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. Now, there is a theory, and who knows if it's true or not, but there's a theory that I have shared with you before. There is a last great day of the feast that's known as Shmini Atzeret, which simply means 8th day, the 8th day. This is in John 7 where Jesus stands up. There's a very famous ceremony that happens there called the water drawing ceremony, where water is drawn in special pitchers from the pool of Siloam and brought up to the temple, and it's poured out like a libation. When the earth is thirsty, when we're thirsty for rain, you literally, with holy abandon, pour out water that is such a precious resource. You pour it out on the altar. It's the same thing with like the olive oil or the new wine. The best and first goes to God. It's just totally poured out. It's like that whole burnt offering that no one gets to eat from. It's literally like a holy waste. You put this animal on there, you burn it to ash. Nobody gets benefit from it. It just all goes up to God. That's why in Hebrew it's called an olah offering. The same root word for the word aliyah, to go up. It just goes up in smoke. So the same happens at this water drawing ceremony on what is known as the 8th day. Now here's what's interesting. In the Gospels, it says that Jesus was circumcised on the 8th day. It's redundant. Every Jewish boy is circumcised on the 8th day, unless it means he was circumcised on the 8th day. If he was circumcised on the 8th day, then it means he was born on the first day of Feast of Tabernacles. And maybe that is why John uses the phrase, the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. It's very interesting. It's entirely possible. You would be shepherds abiding in the fields. The reason you would be abiding in the fields is everyone is living outside in their sukkah. So it's entirely possible that he was born during Feast of Tabernacles, which would also make sense why you would have a census at that time during one of the pilgrimage feasts. All the Jews are going up to Jerusalem anyway. You know, you all go to your hometown. Bethlehem is just a few miles. It's a walkable distance in those days up to Jerusalem. Also, we think that maybe there was no room in the inn. That inn may not be a hotel. It may have been the sukkah. There was not enough room there. Some people also believe that maybe Joseph had the idea to go into the stable for the birth, because being in the sukkah or in the house with a woman giving birth would make it ritually unclean. And so maybe as an act of kindness, we'll take the barn for the birth. That way we won't defile the living space of everyone else. Something interesting to think about. Is that the way it is? I have no idea. But it's just something interesting. If he was born at Feast of Tabernacles, by the way, though, the Mountain of Transfiguration, Peter says, let me build 3 Sukkot, 3 shelters, 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Is it possible that they're visiting him on his birthday? Entirely possible. Yes?
So why would the birth, and if it's too complicated of an answer, don't worry about it. Why would the birth make the woman unclean? Does that relate to the garden somehow?
I don't know. Pain in childbirth relates to the garden, but it's just part of the ritual purity laws in the Old Testament. Giving birth to a baby makes you unclean. And so if, and a boy baby, longer unclean, only ritually unclean, not like, it's not a state of sinfulness, it's just ritual impurity. And giving birth to a boy makes you impure longer than giving birth to a girl. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's like maybe 30 days for a girl, and I think 40 for a boy. But when it says when the time for their, someone will have to look this up in the Gospels. When they bring little baby Jesus to the temple to be seen by Simeon, it says when the time for their purification had come. This means the time to go up and go to the temple and be dipped in the ritual immersion pool in the mikveh. And so it is interesting. It says when the time for their purification. Only Mary is unclean, but it was not uncommon for a righteous husband to also go through that ritual with the wife. Very cool. Good question. Yeah, why? I think the only reason that I would have for why it makes a woman unclean ritually to give birth is because that's what the Bible says.
Maybe the blood.
Yeah. Well, the same would be true with the laws of what's called nidah of a woman's monthly cycle, that you need to go, you're ritually impure. Even to this day, if you're Orthodox and you're a lady, each month you go and dip yourself in the ritual pool after that time. It's very interesting. Yeah, became flesh and tabernacled among us. Let's look at the lulav and etrog. Worship in every direction. So the 4 species are the etrog, the citron, the lulav, the palm, the hadass, or the myrtle, and the aravah, or the willow. So we did it tonight. We waved it in 6 directions, north, south, east, west, up and down, declaring God's presence everywhere. There's a special thing that you do at the end of one of the prayers. There's a famous prayer. It's the central prayer to the synagogue service called the Amidah, which means to stand. It's the standing prayer. And at the end of the standing prayer, you do something called the Oseh Shalom, which in English is, may he who makes peace in his high places make peace for us and upon all Israel. And what you do is you bow in 3 directions when saying that prayer. You say, Oseh Shalom ben Romav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. So it's like, may he who makes peace in his high places make peace upon us and upon all Israel, and let us say amen. Because in the old days, when you would have an audience with the king, when you were about to leave, you would bow and you walk out backwards. So at the end of that prayer, you take 3 steps back and you bow in every direction. Why do you bow in every direction? Because God's everywhere. God's not there and I bow to him like an earthly king. He's everywhere. So I bow in all directions. It's very interesting. Now, let's look at the traditional symbolism. Because Paul, well, actually James talks about faith and works. Faith and works. Faith and action. So the etrog has both taste and smell, both taste and fragrance. That is a symbol of someone who has both faith and good works. Faith and action. We want to be like the etrog. And remember, the etrog is like a picture of our heart. Okay? The whole idea of the 4 species is, and here's where Judaism differs from Christianity. In Judaism, if someone is far away from God, you want them to be with you in the service. Not, well, they're really not living for God right now, and so maybe they shouldn't be in service right now. The belief in Judaism is you need all the kinds of people. People who are super spiritual and people who are not living for God at all. Because they're all Jews. You need every kind of Jew. And so the gathering of the 4 species is for the one that is both faith and works, but also the lulav, the palm branch, has taste only. The palm branch is a date palm. It has a wonderful fruit that has a beautiful taste. But if you smell that palm branch, it has no fragrance whatsoever. So that is faith without action, faith without works. Then you have the myrtle, which has fragrance. It smells very good, but it doesn't have a taste. And so that's action without faith, good works without faith. Then you have the willow, and it has neither. It doesn't smell good or taste good. So it has no faith or good works. The whole point of gathering together the 4 species is we need all the kinds. We need to bring everyone together so it's a complete house of Israel. And again, that's just theologically something different than how we feel in Christianity. Like if someone is really far away from God, our first thought isn't, we need to get them to church there. We need them. They're a part of our community, even if they're far away from God. Normally we think the opposite. Like, maybe you better work some stuff out. Maybe you better stay away a little bit. I don't know if you want them sideways glances. But in the Jewish way, we're going to bring everything together. And again, it's also symbolic of our heart, our eyes, our lips, and our spine. The idea of the spine is to be straight. Israel, by the way, is not only Yisrael, one who struggles with God. You can also split this up as Yashar El, one who is upright with God. Okay? Remember, sometimes God still calls the Jewish people Jacob. He'll say, blah, 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 O Jacob, blah, 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 O Israel. And you're like, isn't that the same group of people? No. When the Jewish people are not acting in their fullness, they're not acting the way God wants them to truly live, they're going back in their old ways, you're acting like Jacob. Israel is when you come into your fullness. So even with us, like you could say in Christian language, someone who's a believer, but in Christianese, they've backslidden a little bit, they've gone back in their old ways a little bit. You're acting like Jacob right now. You got to act like Israel. So that's why there's this distinction here. Bound together, everybody together, we have this unity in diversity. The Jewish people believe that you can learn from someone that isn't where they need to be spiritually right now. There's something you can learn from them. That's an interesting concept. And you would think, what in the world could I learn, from somebody like that? There's always something that, that we can glean from somebody's story, even if they're not living right. We can learn from anyone. The messianic reflection at the top of the third page, the body of Messiah mirrors this. Different gifts, one Spirit. Yes?
Back to the purification days.
Yes.
It says 33 for a male and 66 for if it's a girl, a daughter.
Oh, so it's more for a girl. Okay, my bad. I
Yeah,
thought it was reversed.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were because I was like, wait, I know it's Leviticus 12.
Leviticus 12. There we
Yeah,
go. Thank you.
1 through 5.
All right.
And she says bring a year-old lamb.
But I think there's provision for if you're poor, you could bring birds.
It's for a sin offering? When the days of perfect, yeah, I thought it was a turtle dove too.
I think it can be. Maybe in, are you in Leviticus now?
When her days of purification are completed for a son or a daughter, she is to bring to the Cohen at the entrance of the tent of meetings a year-old lamb for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering.
Okay. There you go.
So, 2 different.
There were always some that couldn't necessarily afford, a lamb. And so there are provisions for, and here's what's interesting too. As long as that first offering has been given in the day, what's called the tamid offering, the continual burnt offering, as long as that has been offered, other offerings can be made that bring atonement. Once that blood is given that first time, there are grain offerings you can bring that the Bible says can be an atonement for sin. Why? You might not be able to afford a lamb or a ram or whatever, but the priestly class has already offered that offering of a blood sacrifice. So even a grain offering can atone for sin because God, it's sort of like you're not commanded to blow the ram's horn trumpet, the shofar. You're commanded to hear it. Why? Not everybody has access to one. But everybody can go where they can hear one. It's interesting. There's always a grace involved. So when we worship, we wave our praise in every direction because his presence fills all creation. Awesome. The water and the light, Jesus at Sukkot. This is John 7:37 and 38. When everything gets quiet, everybody gets to this climax of noise of the shaking of the palm branches, and it's a huge sound. And then everything gets quiet as the water is poured out. And at that quiet moment, Jesus stands up in a loud voice, which would have been looked at as completely out of the ordinary and inappropriate. But he yells in a loud voice, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink." And rivers of living water can spring up out of his soul. It's really very interesting. So, the water drawing ceremony, the priests draw water from the pool of Siloam and poured it on the altar. And this symbolized joy, rain, and God's Spirit. Remember, they're shaking this and making it sound like a wind. Remember the word for spirit in Hebrew is ruach. That's also the word for wind. So Jesus is making a pun when he says to Nicodemus, no one knows where the wind comes from, so it is with the Spirit. He literally said to him, no one knows where the ruach comes from or where it's going, so it also is with the ruach. You only know from context, if you're listening in the Hebrew, that he's talking about wind and spirit. It's the exact same word. It's all the same word for breath, by the way, which is why it's also a word play when it says God breathed into him the breath, the ruach of life, and man became a living ruach, a living soul, a living spirit. Really interesting. Yeah, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. That's when he cried out. And then the illumination of the temple. The 4 great menorahs were lit in the temple courts. In the tabernacle, there was only 1. In Solomon's temple, there were 10. 10 of these giant menorahs. At Jesus' time, there were 4. And what's interesting, you see 2 of them in the Chosen as they're walking in the temple courts. they're walking in the outer court, and you could see in to where the actual sanctuary is, and you see these giant menorahs on stands as they walk by. It's really very interesting, very accurate. And so when Jesus declares, I am the light of the world, he's making reference to these giant menorahs. It is said that when these were lit and it was dark, you could see the light for miles. Because remember, you don't have light pollution back then.
Yeah.
You know, you have these giant things, especially in the time of King Solomon, there are 10 of them. I mean, you're talking about something very cool. And remember, they're made of solid gold. So this light is being shining off the gold, and it would have been very impressive. Our application there, Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, foreshadows the indwelling spirit and the light of the Messiah shining through us. Now, we've talked about this, but let's go ahead and look at the reference. We're doing so good on time. I'm so proud. Zechariah 14, 16 through 19. Let's go there. And then let's also look at Revelation 21, verses 1 through 4. Who's got the first one? Don't all jump at once to read God's word.
I'm still trying to turn pages.
Oh, sorry. Zechariah 14, 16 through 19. You got it? Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Is it I?
It is you, yes.
Okay. 14, 16.
Through 19, yeah.
Then the survivors from all the nations that have attacked Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, and to celebrate the festival of Tabernacles. If any of the peoples of the earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, they will have no rain. If the Egyptian people do not go up and take part, they will have no rain. The Lord will bring on them the plague he inflicts on the nations that do not go up to celebrate the festival of Tabernacles. This will be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all the nations that do not go up to celebrate the festival of Tabernacles.
God is commanding us in this millennial kingdom to celebrate. We got to take the road trip. I don't know how we'll travel then, but we got to do it. It's a statute in the prophets that this thing is forever. We got to do it. And if you don't go, you don't get rain. So you know what that says to me? Apparently we still need rain. Apparently things still grow. I mean, we know we'll still eat. It talks about us eating. But it also says weird things like lions will eat grass like a cow. You know, they'll eat hay, and children will play near a viper's nest, and they won't be scared. Wolves will lie down with lambs. It's all very Hakuna Matata, you know. Yes.
The Jewish people believe that at the end of the 1,000 years will be a new heaven and earth?
Yes.
Do they believe it's going to be a new heaven and earth, or he's going to make a new earth here?
So when we talk about heaven, we don't mean heaven where God lives. That is something that we get wrong. Okay? When in Hebrew, when we talk about heaven, it's not really heaven, it's the heavens. There's no singular word heaven in Hebrew. It's shamayim, it's plural. And inside the word shamayim, you hear mayim, it's water. So there's water there. So when it says new heavens and new earth, it means a new sky, new land. It doesn't mean new heaven where God lives. There's nothing wrong with where God lives. When it says new heavens, it means everything about this world, including the sky, will be remade. So it's...
Like some think of that, like the... Some people I know going off track, but some people believe that from the dinosaurs. Like when I read back on Jewish thought, some people do believe that got destroyed and then God made.
Like a new version?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. There is a belief in Judaism that there even is a belief in Judaism that's where we get all the humanoid ape-like creatures, that God made everything and then he was like, nah, I need to make somebody in my image. I need to make a human being that has intelligence and a soul and all that
Maybe
stuff.
they didn't act right. So,
Who knows? Yeah, who knows? But yeah, there's this idea of there being a perfection of of everything. And even in the book of Revelation, we see that like the heavenly Jerusalem comes out of the sky and like heaven meets earth. I mean, it's really quite exciting. So there are, at least in Judaism, there is a belief that maybe this happens like after the 1,000 years, but there's a belief in Judaism, and I think some Christians believe this too, that we'll be able to travel to whatever planet we want to go to. That we can just go to Mars or Jupiter or whatever and see what's going on there. Yes?
I always thought when he said that he would give out cities, remember?
Yeah.
I always thought, well, geez, if there's that many people getting rewards in cities, it's got to be beyond the scope of this planet.
Maybe it's planets.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be so cool?
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't 4 Earths fit into Jupiter? I mean, that's what I think.
Maybe. I mean, it's pretty big.
A lot more than that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And do you think there's going to be, I pray about this and ask God sometimes, do you think when the new Earth comes, he'll have a new scenario for us? Or will we just
Like things for us to do?
Well, a whole different scenario, like instead of like with Adam and Eve, or will we just carry on like having gardens and,
Or is it gonna be like Groundhog Day? Is that what you're trying to say?
No. No, I mean, I think there'll be,
We're starting with that.
it's interesting. Even when God created the garden, I mean, we talk about it as being perfect, but it needed tending. You know, man had a job to take care of the garden. So even though it was perfect, there was a responsibility. So I think that eternity, I think we're going to have things to do. And I think there'll be different jobs. And obviously the Bible talks about being different levels of reward in heaven. So maybe there'll be like different ranks. Like some people will be like managers of certain people that do certain jobs or whatever. Who knows? But I like the idea. The belief in Judaism is the only reason that there are stars and planets is that each one is a physical representation of an angelic being. So there is an angel that's in charge of Mars. There's an angel that's in charge of Jupiter. There's a lot of things in paganism that are simply distortions of something that was originally a Jewish belief. You know, because like they believe that Mars is a god. You know, well, maybe not a god, but the Jews believe there is an angel that is associated with Mars. It's the angel of Mars in charge of Mars, and that's the only reason Mars exists, and all the other planets. In fact, there's the zodiac, by the way, is a perversion of a Jewish idea. There is a Jewish idea that depending on what season you were born in, you may have certain traits. So that became a very paganistic idea and a very godless idea as it turned into horoscopes and things like that. But the original idea, there was a zodiac-like belief in Judaism that had to do with constellations and when you were born and all that different kind of stuff. It's really very interesting.
maybe there'll be people on the other planets and then maybe he'll make people and send us over there.
Hey, maybe, who
You
knows?
never know, huh? Missionaries.
Maybe we'll be missionaries to aliens. Who knows? That's hilarious.
They'll do.
Who knows?
Predator.
No.
Not that kind of alien. Okay. The prophetic and messianic fulfillment. So all nations will come to Jerusalem to celebrate Sukkot in the Messianic age. And in Revelation, behold, the dwelling, the sukkah of God is with man. Let's go to our last page here.
You want to read Revelation?
Oh, sure, if you got it.
21, 1 through 4. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away.
Amen.
Awesome. Very cool. On our last page there, the feast becomes reality. God himself will dwell with his people forever. So Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, is not just a remembrance, it's a rehearsal of the coming kingdom. And the earthly sukkah points to the eternal one, the new Jerusalem. So as we close tonight, lessons for believers today. Letter A there, God's presence in fragile places. Our lives are like tabernacles. They're like Sukkot, temporary, but sacred when filled with His Spirit. Letter B, joy and dependence. True joy comes from trusting, not possessing. Imagine how joyful you are when you're dependent on God. He provides, He comes through, and that joy that you have, that exuberance you feel when He's provided, when He's come through for you, that's a perpetual feeling that we can have. It doesn't come from, I possess this, I got this for myself. When God provides, it really strengthens your faith. It gives you that joy. Hospitality and unity, letter C there. Inviting others into our sukkah, physical or spiritual, reflects God's heart. And letter D there, pilgrims of hope. We are travelers longing for the eternal dwelling. Hebrews 11:13 through 16. Our closing thought there. Sukkot reminds us that God's presence is not limited to temples of stone or moments of perfection. He dwells with us in our weakness, our wilderness, and our worship. Every sukkah, every act of joy, and every shared meal beneath its branches is a rehearsal for the eternal dwelling of God with His people. Good stuff. Awesome. Really appreciate you all being here. Please take one of those Torah portion charts with you if you like, and that will give you the reading for next week. And thank you all so very much. God bless you. And as we say, Chag Sukkot Sameach, a happy Feast of Tabernacles to you.